You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am enlightened to be here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
One more journey into the darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I sent you this article, which I found fascinating.
You find the most interesting, articles that you want us to discuss. And sometimes I'm like, where does he spend his time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't like this topic because you don't
I'm
like
not a touchy-feely kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the article is on the Neuroscience of Enlightenment.
Right.
And you said that you're not sure that you've ever had an enlightenment experience.
Well, they make a distinction between enlightenment in the sense of 18th century rational thought, was called the Age of Enlightenment, and enlightenment as an aha moment where the universe, like you hear the sound of a gong or you see a color or a light flash, and the world changes for you. And I said, I've never had an experience like that. And you said, oh, I bet you have. And I said, no, I don't think so. I've had a couple of near-death experiences, but the universe didn't gong and the sun didn't change colors and my spirit didn't move. I just was scared until it passed, and then I was like, whew. Yeah.
But you obviously know what the word enlightenment means.
That's because I'm enlightened in the 18th century.
Do you believe
aspect of it
that people can?
I believe that people believe it.
You believe that people, okay,
Yeah.
so which is different than whether or not people can, whether you believe that people
don't know.
can. Okay.
That's like people saying, I saw God. I saw the face of God. And it spoke to me. I had a near-death experience, and I went in the tunnel, and I heard the train, I saw the light, and I came back. I don't know.
And so you know that I have said
not
to you
had that experience.
that I've had, there are two profound moments in my life where I
But
feel
you were
like
on drugs.
one was on drugs,
Sorry.
one was
be
not.
more appropriate. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not offended by that. I'm just saying that.
And I don't mean it to be dismissive. It's explanatory.
So do you think that it's real for people who believe it's real, or do you think that people delude themselves?
I don't know, Michael. All I can tell you is that I've never had that experience that I'm aware of. And so when you say to me, well, I had that experience, I'm like, okay, I'm happy to hear about it. Maybe I'll learn something that I don't know. But that doesn't mean I'm going to believe it. It's not my experience.
Well, no, not that you would believe the enlightened experience that I had, but do you, well, I guess now we're getting into machinations and minutia, and then maybe that's not beneficial. Okay, so some people might say that the goal of therapy is enlightenment. Do you believe that is, what do you believe the foundational goal of therapy to be?
Helping someone identify the ways or areas in which their life is not satisfying, and helping them find a path forward towards a more satisfying life. So whatever that means.
And so if a person were to do that, like say that, a person all of a sudden just, on any given Tuesday, here's the therapist saying, could you reframe that? Could you state that in a different way that would be less burdensome? And then the person, for whatever reason, they get it and they say, oh yeah, I could do it this way. Do you think that's that little enlightenment? Would you say that, or would you just say that's a rationalization?
Well, so I have a mixture of feelings. One would be like, yeah, great, we're getting somewhere here. I'm happy for you that you had that experience. But the skeptical part of me is like, it's not one trial learning. You're not going to change your whole... Like, my wife and I watch stupid TV shows. We watch one called restaurant Impossible with Robert Irvine. And he finds these little restaurants that are going broke, and he comes in and in 2 days' time reconfigures the restaurant and does intense therapy with the owners about what's screwed up in their lives, whether it's their marriage or their relationship or their experience of cancer, their trauma, whatever. And in 2 days...
Is he a chef or a therapist?
Yes, that's a question.
Oh, okay.
But in 2 days, he completely turns them around.
Uh-huh.
And life is going to be different for them forever. And I'm thinking, I'd done a lot of therapy through the years. Nobody ever changed in 2 visits that stuck for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking 6 months out, they're still going to go broke. But we don't know that. I mean, who knows? But my point is, so if a client said, I had an aha experience when I was sitting here with you, I suddenly thought, oh my God. I remember one time I was in college. I was taking a class in Gestalt therapy techniques. And the professor asked someone to share a dream that they had had. And then they asked the members of the class using Gestalt techniques to do some role playing where we took on parts of the dream and we acted out the dream. So the dream was this guy was at the airport and the PA system was calling his name and he was trying to find the gate where he was supposed to meet people at the airport. And me, being the cynic that I am, decided that I would take on the role. Somebody wanted to be the PA system. Somebody wanted to be him wandering around from gate to gate. I was going to take on the role of a plane that left. So I left. But he had an epiphany. In the acting out of that Gestalt experience of the dream, it came to him that what the dream was saying is that he should quit his job and leave his wife and move to California.
What?
So he did.
No.
Yeah. That was
from being in the class. That's what he got out of it.
Yes.
And the professor was cool with that.
No. Well, I don't know. I wasn't part of their conversation, but he never came back to class. And the story that I was told later was he moved to California. He decided to become somebody that studies pressure points on your foot and does reflexology in California, where there was a market for it. So that's what he wanted to do, and that's what he did. It changed his life.
Okay.
So he had an epiphany.
Uh-huh.
I've never had an experience like that. That's all I'm saying.
And obviously, I'm not sure that either one of us would say that that's certainly not the thing I'm talking about. And
you talk about when you take drugs. You have an aha with the universe and feel yourself being part with the sun.
When I was younger, I did imbibe in the use of illicit substances. And I did have an experience on LSD that I would liken to these experiences.
We have a good friend that we both know, a therapist, friend of ours, who I saw the other day. I haven't seen her in a long time. And saw her at a concert. And she said she just had an interesting therapeutic experience. She took MMDA, and she had this experience where she saw things that she had never seen before and learned something from it. To me...
it's MDMA. So you said MMDA.
Okay.
But and so just for people who are listening...
Or maybe she took the wrong drug. I don't know.
No, it's...
Yeah, fine. Thank you for the correction. I told you when you wanted to do this conversational topic, I'm open to discussing any of these things, but you asked me, have I ever had a similar experience? And I'm saying to you, no.
Yeah.
I never have.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
And I'm just trying to get a gauge for then what you think of when other people say that. It feels like,
so
to
if
me...
somebody says to me, I had a past life experience, let me tell you about it. I went back in 1800s, I was the Queen of Sheba. I'm interested. I said, what do you learn? What was it like? And how is that relevant to your life today? And what do you think? I'm not going to say I'm smart and I know that that's impossible. I'm going to say, okay, how did that affect you? What did you learn from it? What can I learn from it? I'm open to that. And I'm not going to say, well, BS. I'm going to say, I've never had a past life experience.
Right.
But who am I to know in the universe?
You're not judging
have one. No.
the veracity of someone else.
No, not at all.
So,
and I'm curious.
Where do you... So you know that I am very, very much into Carl Jung. Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, which can be passed down genetically from generation to generation. How do you feel about that?
I'm open to the possibility. As far as I know, it hasn't happened in my life. Yeah. But if it's happened in yours, I'm willing to hear about it.
Would you be willing to say that there is a possibility that you have this latent collective unconscious as a part of your existence that you've just never accessed?
Tomorrow, I'll be 75.
Yeah.
In my 75 years.
That's right.
I have yet to have the universe knock on my head and say, hey, bozo, this is what it's all about. But I'm open to that. If it comes today, that'd be great. But if you tell me it happened to you, then I'm interested in hearing, so what does that mean to you? What do you understand from that? How does that affect the way that you now make decisions and live your life?
And
what was that like?
So, and I'm just interested in, let's take our break and come back.
All right.
Okay. Hey, Brett, if you were going to tell somebody to check out something on the internet to help them with their mental health, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them, listen to Psych with Mike.
Why would you tell them that?
Because it's probably one of the most easily listenable experiences you can have that will give you information that's useful for a whole spectrum of concerns that people have.
I agree, and I have actually been told that by at least a dozen people, several of whom were not married to me, and some of them didn't even know me.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. It's when we get that kind of feedback from people, it is so incredibly humbling and overwhelming for me.
It is for both of us.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it, and as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, and so you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm interested in pushing on this just a little bit, just to see what happens. For all of my friendship with you, starting from when I was a graduate student until whatever period of time that you started, you told me, oh yeah, I believe in therapy, I do therapy, but I don't go to therapy.
Yeah.
And then you came to a point in your life where you decided, okay, I'm going to go to therapy. And my feeling about that is that you feel like that was really important, and that there were a lot of things that happened as a result of that process that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Did you experience that in any way as what we're talking about?
I don't know. Again, I experienced it as a powerful emotional release. I experienced it as an intellectual understanding. I experienced it as an opportunity to reframe some of my script about myself and my life experiences.
And so if somebody said to you, that's exactly what enlightenment...
Okay, I'm open to that.
You would be open to that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wouldn't describe it the way the guy in the article described it.
But you're I think you're getting hung up on what his
Michael,
presentation was.
I'm absolutely prepared to hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm prepared to hear that you did have one of those experiences the way it's described.
I
wouldn't argue that with you.
I had one that obviously was while I was...
Yeah, but you said you had
LSD.
Another one.
I had another one that was not associated with using drugs, and that one was that when I was going to college as an undergraduate, and I took my first logic class and was introduced to Socratic syllogisms, that really profoundly, I remember feeling like I had an experience where the way that my brain processed information changed, and it was never the same after that. And so what Piaget called that, so we've talked about Piaget and his theory of cognitive development, he called that equilibration. So when you're born, right, you only have sensory motor learning. You don't have abstract language abilities. And so you learn by the way that your body feels because of the way it changes in space or things that happen to it. That's sensory motor learning. And it's the same way you learn how to ride a bike or swing a golf club or a baseball bat. So we all have experiences of that, but we don't often, once we learn language, we don't ever really attribute sensory motor learning to how we process information because it's just easier and
Oh, well, we say to people in therapy all the time, if you have your hand on the stove and
Right.
you're screaming, it's hot, it's hot.
yeah, take your hand away.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's sensory motor learning
Yes.
right there.
Right. But what Piaget says is that when you get to a point where now you can process this abstract language, all of a sudden now, boom, there's this thing, your brain now has to change structurally to accommodate this new way of thinking, and that's called equilibration. And I think that is part of what we are talking about with this concept of enlightenment, because they're really just talking about the structures in your brain that are changing. Specifically, this is all linked through the limbic system, the amygdala, specifically the thalamus, which is where the default mode, and I'm not going to bore you with that because I know you don't love that, but I believe that that is the process of enlightenment, is those equilibration processes that Piaget talked about.
So if I said to you, my thalamus is really hypo today, your response would be, how exciting for you.
That's two different things.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So your thalamus is the exchange area of the brain where it's the switching station.
Yeah, it goes from French to English.
Everything gets processed through the thalamus except smell. We don't know why smell doesn't, but
Oh,
smell
that comes
doesn't.
through your feet.
No, it goes to a different area, the olfactory bulbs. But regardless, this process is a process that we're only beginning to understand. And so I think that when we're on...
Maybe you need to have an epiphany.
I don't know that I'm smart enough to have that epiphany.
Okay.
But I do think that there are going to be people who are going to be able to track this more scientifically and more controllably, and I think there is something to this. But
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I know the story about the DNA molecule in the dream. So I can only say, to my knowledge, I've not had that kind of experience. I could never say you haven't had it, or somebody else hasn't had it, or couldn't have it, or wouldn't have it. And if you tell me you had it, I'm interested in learning. What was that like for you?
Yeah. Oh, okay, so that's the approach you would take, because I was going to say, so let's turn this back into a clinical conversation.
Right.
And so somebody comes to your office and says, man, I've had this profound, enlightened experience. You're not going to say, oh, I've never had an enlightened experience, so I can't talk to you about that. What are you going to do with that person?
No.
You're going to do exactly, so you're
I
going to
moved
say...
to St. Louis. I lived here 20 years. I'd never been to Ted Drew's.
Yeah.
Everybody I know talks about, oh my God, you have to go to Ted Drew's. So I was dating my wife. We'd been dating a month or so, and she and her roommate took me to Ted Drew's on a Friday night. The parking lot was full, hundreds of people standing around.
Sure.
I get a Ted Drew's ice cream cone, take a lick off of it. I fall to my knees, I throw my arms out, and I scream, I've seen the light. They both just walked away from me. They had no compassion.
Did you actually do that?
I actually did that, yeah.
On Gravois Road? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's not on Gravois.
Yeah,
It was the old one. It's on Watson. But at any rate, I did that.
No, Watson Road.
And,
You are
and
100%
they
correct.
walked away from me and got in the car. And I'm still on my knees there with 100 people around me going, what's wrong with him? But I had that experience.
Those people didn't recognize the enlightened experience that you were having?
Some of them seemed to. Others just sort of moved away from me.
Yeah. So you're playing light with that. But if somebody really, if you had a client that really genuinely believed that they had had one of these experiences and wanted to process it
as a result of my therapy, because then I would say, I need to tell you I've just raised my rates.
But again, you're making light of this. But if someone were to come into therapy to genuinely process this, you would do that by trying to understand what their experience was.
My mother, her husband died, and I talked to her a year or so later about this experience. She said, for the first 5 nights after he died, she would wake up in the middle of the night, and he would be laying in bed next to her in the suit he was buried in. And they would have conversations about the farm and the children and what needed to be done and what she needed to know and what he was hoping she would do. And then on the fifth night, he said, I won't be back. We've done what I need to do now. I'm free to go. She believed that. That was real for her. That reframed her understanding of death, and it reframed her understanding of what she needed to do with the farm and what have you. I would never say, I don't believe that. I would never say, you're stupid, you're ignorant, that's a sucker. I would say, I've never had that experience. But I've talked to a dozen people that have had a similar experience that they believe is real. So who am I to say no?
Well, and that then brings up another question, whether that's an internal projection or an external
I don't care.
phenomenon. I was going to say,
Michael.
does it matter?
No, not at all. Not to me, it doesn't. So my question,
it doesn't matter to her.
How do you feel about that? What was that like for you? Oh my gosh, that was a good experience. Now, if it was a bad experience, then we approach that conversation a little differently. But why would I take that away from her? It felt good to her. She felt like that was an anchoring discovery about her love for him and their relationship and life after death and whatever that quieted a lot of her anxieties. So I'm good with that. I'm happy she had that.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether it's an internal projection or an external phenomenon.
No.
It has the same impact on the individual and therefore can change.
It doesn't matter to me if the amazing Randy could prove it with a film, like, oh, we set your house up, we caught the ghost. None of that therapeutically. If I have a conversation with a client that's saying these things, my question is, how is this beneficial to the therapy? What did you learn from this? What was this experience like for you that you can take? What do you take from that? How do you embrace that? How does that help you move forward? Because I think those are clinical conversations, but no conversation about, well, let's prove it. Let's measure the reality of it. You have to function in the real world. You're not sane. I would not do that.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you believe that functioning in the real world is more important or equal to subjective reality? And so what I mean by that is, like, we can't prove aliens exist. We can't prove they're ghosts. We can't prove they're Bigfoot. But then there are people who believe those things and then they chase after them. I don't know that the proving part matters. Do you?
You mean like the guy that wears a tinfoil hat on his head to keep the alien telling him his thoughts or stealing his thoughts? My question is, how then do you live in the world?
Right.
And are you dangerous to yourself or to others? Do we need to protect you? I mean, what difference does it make if you're happy and comfortable and you're not at risk, if you're not putting anyone else at risk?
Yeah.
Who am I to judge the quality of your life? You have to tell me. I want you to experience life as best you can for what you're looking for. So,
without making a judgmental.
I'm still human. I mean, I wouldn't do it with you. So if you're the client and I'm having this conversation with you, you leave, I may go next door to the other therapist and say, God, I just had the weirdest experience.
Yeah.
This guy's really, nuts. But I'm not going to say that to you because I don't believe that about you. My conversation with you, the moment that we have together where we're connected and I'm listening to you and I understand you, has its own valuable measure for me. And if I can be with you in that moment and help you understand something,
right,
or make choices or decisions that are going to improve the quality of your life, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do.
And people may think, oh, well, then you're being a disingenuous person or a disingenuous therapist, and I would disagree. It's no different than any other topic that could be controversial, like abortion. You might counsel someone.
I have my own beliefs about that.
About abortion, and you may counsel somebody who has a belief that is different, and after that session is over, you may go next door and say, hey man, I was talking to this person about abortion, and then this is what this person believes, and I don't believe that. And that doesn't mean that the therapy that you're doing is less genuine or less sincere. It is possible to counsel people who have different beliefs than us.
I think so.
It should be.
I think I've done it.
I think you're an incredibly limited therapist.
My job is not to proselytize and convince you to believe
Or
the way
judge.
I believe. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's implied. My job is to say to you, okay, if you believe that about abortion, how does that structure you moving forward?
Yeah.
And is that going to be a painful experience for you? Is your quality of life going to be better? Are the sacrifices you want to make worth what it's going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
How do we process this? You know, if you say, well, I believe abortion is murder, and I believe the way to solve it is to kill the abortion doctor, so I'm going to go do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to call the police.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I guess we're not any closer to a conclusion.
You're not having an epiphany after this conversation?
Well, I mean, obviously, I believe not only in the reality of these experiences, but in the truth of them. And I think that what you're saying is...
Those are loaded terms, man.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, so what I hear you saying is that you believe that they may happen, but you don't know that you believe that they are truthful, or and I don't want to say truthful.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that it doesn't matter to me. I've not had that experience. If you think that you have had that experience, I'm willing to hear it and have a conversation with you about it and try to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not denying that the universe allows that possibility. I'm just saying I haven't had that experience.
Then why would you think that that is? Do you not want to have that experience?
I don't know. I haven't had it. How am I going to know? Is this going to taste good to you if you've never eaten it before? I don't know.
Well, because like I said, to me, it feels like that your decision to go to therapy and the things that you got out of therapy are exactly what we're talking about, but you didn't experience it that way. And so your experience, or anybody's, not just yours, the experience of the individual clearly plays a very important role in all this.
Yeah.
You may get the same information that another person gets, and that person may find it to be enlightening, and you may not. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad or inadequate or whatever. There's no judgment. But I would actually argue that I think you've had exactly the same experiences that we're talking about. They didn't feel enlightening to you. But they may have felt enlightening to someone else, and you wouldn't judge that. You would
I wouldn't try to
completely
take it away from you.
Exactly right. You would completely accept that. But so when you say, "Oh, that's never happened to you," you've clearly had some pretty profound experiences in your life.
Yeah. Oral Roberts, a famous Christian preacher, went on television one day and said that he was asleep the night before, and he was awakened by a weight on his chest, and Jesus was standing there choking him to death. And Jesus said, if you don't bring me $9 million by October, I'm going to come back and take you. So he went on a nationwide search for money to raise $9 million for this. I don't remember if it was a hospital or university or something that needed the money, because he wasn't ready to die and he didn't want to, but he believed that Jesus told him, and take you out if you don't get $9 million. Well, he got $9 million. So we don't know if it was really going to happen or not.
Right.
But that's what he said he believed.
Yeah.
That was his experience.
Yeah.
If a client came to me and said that, my job is not to convince them they're wrong. My job is to say, what are you going to do with that experience? How do you understand it? What are you going to do with it? What if people laugh at you? What if people support you? What are the options here? How do you get through this? And how can a conversation with me help you get through this?
So,
not mine to say, you're an idiot, we need to lock you away.
And not that you would say, oh, you're an idiot, but do you think that there would you feel comfortable saying, well, the God I believe in isn't short of cash?
I wouldn't have that debate with a client. Those are sophistries. That's an intellectual exercise for me to prove I'm smarter than you are. I don't know. You said this was your reality. This was your experience. This is your mission now to do this, an imperative. How's that going to affect your life?
So then it seems like then that what we're really getting down to is that while you may not like the term enlightenment, what we're really talking about at the most foundational level is the experience of the individual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how they understand it and what they're going to do with it.
Yeah. So I guess...
And my own experience, I'm open to learning. Teach me.
Enlightenment maybe... Okay, and I'm going to say this. I'm just thinking this out. Okay. Is that a self-delusion? Like, do we say, oh, I'm enlightened, like that's a special secret knowledge, like UFOs are real, and you don't know it, but I know it?
Okay, so 75. I don't know that I've ever said to anyone, I'm enlightened.
Exactly.
I don't think that way.
Yeah.
I don't go there. But if you came to me and said, I'm enlightened, I know what you need to do. I'd be like, no.
Well, I think that anybody who says, I'm enlightened, I know what you need to do, has missed the boat. That's missed the mark. I think that the best you could say is, I'm enlightened, I know what I need to do.
Yeah. Oh, no, I could support that.
Yeah. Yeah, but now that we're having this conversation, I'm wondering if enlightenment as a phrase is something that we bandy about to make us feel.
I like the term enlightenment as a phrase that says understanding, growth, knowledge, experience, to learn from and incorporate those things into your reality.
Right.
I don't like the term as an aha epiphany. Enlightenment is something that just hit you over the head with a rock and said, life changed for me. That, to me, is outside my realm of understanding.
But, okay, so if somebody said, I went to therapy and I came out of it more enlightened, would you be okay with that?
Yes, because I wouldn't sit and invest in having a debate with them over the terminology.
Over their language. Yeah. But you don't know that would be how you would conceive of the experience.
How many angels can dance on the head of a pin?
No, I hear you. Yeah. So in the end, I think we just have to acknowledge that different people have different experiences and express that differently, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And there are some experiences that do have a traceable effect on the human brain, and we probably need to do more of trying to track that as our ability to do so becomes more...
I don't need to do... I see videos on the internet, TikTok. Some guy in a flying suit dives out of a plane and soars at 200 miles an hour near rocks and over canyons. I don't need to do that.
No, I don't think I need to do that.
Just because somebody else can do it doesn't mean I need to do it. It looks
super cool.
Well, I like seeing the videos.
Well, the only reason that I'm so supportive of the tracking the brain chemistry and things like that is that feels like that is how psychology starts to make inroads into being a real physical science rather than a soft science.
And I don't have any need for that to happen.
You don't need that. Yeah. No. Okay. I like the idea of that.
I understand that. Yeah. We're different that way.
We are.
You're wrong, I'm right.
And it's always been that way. So if you have any questions about enlightenment or would like to share your stories of enlightenment with us, which I would be delighted to hear.
I could just think about declassifying all those things, and they just
are.
Yeah.
You can send those to us at psychwithmike.com, and I would love to read them. And I will share them with Brett.
Not me. Send them to Mike.
Please go to the YouTubes and find us at Psych with Mike and subscribe to this show there. Go to Apple Podcast and leave us a comment and a rating. That really, really helps other people find the show, and we appreciate that. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
Don't send anything to me except good thoughts.
And money.
Well, that'd be helpful. Those are good thoughts.